And we are very pleased to welcome John Frascotti, who is president of Hasbro Brands, with us today. A little bit about Hasbro. Hasbro is home to some of the world's most popular branded franchises, names that you are likely to recognize, like Transformers, Monopoly, My Little Pony, Magic the Gathering. And today, John will discuss with us the strategy behind Hasbro's transformation from a traditional toy and game company into a branded play organization. This is not John's first time here in New Haven. He's a Yale College alum. He has a background in entertainment law, and was recently at Reebok before he joined Hasbro in 2008. So please welcome me and join me in welcoming John to us today.
Thanks, Charlotte. So good afternoon, everyone. What I'll do is, it looks like we have about 45 minutes. So I'll speak for about 30 to 35 minutes. I'll try to leave about 10 minutes at the end. Come on. About 10 minutes at the end for any Q&A that you might have. But please feel free to interrupt at any time during the presentation. It's probably better if you interrupt because it'll foster some good discussion. And what I wanted to do today was give you a little sense of Hasbro, what it's all about, and also give you a few case studies on a couple of our brands, just to give you a sense to illustrate it. So please interrupt at any time. And a little bit on what Charlotte said on my background. So trained as a lawyer. I practiced law for about 8 years when I got out of law school in the entertainment law business in Los Angeles and a little bit in Boston. And then for 10 years, I worked at Reebok, and I did a lot of sports marketing, product line management, licensing, sort of a little bit of everything in terms of making that switch over from legal into business. When I look back on it, I think I should have gone to business school instead of law school, but made that mistake early, got it out of my system after 5 or 6 years. And then in 1999, 2000, I was president and COO of a startup called myteam.com, which was an internet startup, which basically took all of the things that go around youth sports, from registering your kids to scheduling to correspondence between teams and coaches and individuals to database administration for the big national organizations like Little League Baseball. We took all of that and brought it online at a time when it was all a paper business. And the popcorn of the business, you know, in the movie business, you make all your money on the popcorn. You make very little on the actual film itself, the movie house operators, the theaters operators. So the popcorn in that business was actually a direct marketing business because a lot of companies like Honda and McDonald's and others who wanted to market to the family had no direct way of reaching their consumers online. So we created that direct marketing opportunity. Back to Reebok in 2003 to 2008, where I was head of the sports division. At that time, we got acquired by a company called Adidas. You might know it as Adidas, but the Europeans call it Adidas. It was founded by a guy named Adi Dassler. That's the reason it's called Adidas. By the way, Puma was founded by his brother, Horst Dassler. And if you go to this little town of Herzegovina in Germany, they're about 10 miles apart across the river, and they hate each other now and compete. But they started as brothers. But anyway, we got acquired by a German company, which is a story for another time, maybe a few beers. We can talk about some of the cultural challenges of a German company acquiring a very entrepreneurial U.S. business. And anyway, in 2008, I came to Hasbro as really the company's first global CMO, and then last year was made president of Hasbro Brands. So let's talk about Hasbro. I spent about 10 minutes giving you a background of what the company's all about. And some of it may surprise you, because I think when a lot of people think of Hasbro, they think of a traditional toy and game company. But in fact, as Charlotte mentioned, we're actually what we call a branded play company, which means that we take our brands and we deliver them to consumers in a multitude of experiences, from toys and games to motion pictures to television shows to licensed products like t-shirts, caps, footwear, backpacks, to digital gaming. Really a whole host of experiences. So let me take you through the presentation. This is our mission. Every company should have a mission. It should be easy to understand. This is ours. Creating the world's best play experiences. You'll notice that it's not about creating the best toys or games. It's about creating play experiences, because as a company, we're very focused on creating play experiences. We compete for all of your brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, moms and dads, little brothers and sisters, leisure time dollars. And if you think about everyone's lives, Everyone spends a certain amount of time sleeping, a certain amount of time eating, a certain amount of time doing some type of education or work, and we're basically going after the rest of time that people spend in any type of leisure time activities. Our goal, we're a public company, so our goal clearly is to profitably grow it. We are focused on the long term, innovation, content, immersive consumer experiences, and we're focused on brands as a company. Let me take you through what that means. So we have what we call a brand architecture. The one thing to note about Hasbro is it is a virtual treasure chest of brands. We have hundreds and hundreds of brands in our company, and we've chosen very selectively the ones to market and develop. So we have a group of 7 brands that we call our franchise brands. These are large brands, several $100 million plus. We feel they have the capability of being $1 billion over time. They're Transformers, Magic the Gathering, Monopoly, Nerf, Play-Doh, My Little Pony, and Littlest Pet Shop. These brands are all global brands. We market our brands in over 120 countries around the world. And we're developing all of these brands on multiple platforms. So I'm going to talk about some of these brands today. This is the heart and soul of our company. This is probably about between 45 and 55% of our revenue. So we're a $4.2 billion company. So these brands represent about $2 billion worth of global sales for us. We then have a group of brands we call our partner brands. We've chosen to partner with the best storytellers in the world. And so when you look at these brands like Marvel, which are Iron Man, Hulk, Avengers, you all know the Marvel characters, Spider-Man, Star Wars, which is all of the Star Wars movies, but as you know, beginning December 18th this year, there'll be another 6 movies coming over the several years. They haven't announced 6, but several movies coming over the next several years. I don't know if there'll be 6. I think they've announced 3 or 4 so far. And then there is Disney Princess. We know Cinderella just got a new Cinderella movie came out recently, did very well. But you know all the princesses, I'm sure you're familiar with those, as well as Frozen, which was a tremendously successful movie. And a short just came out, a 7-minute Frozen short on the front of Cinderella. We're also partnering with Disney on a brand called Disney Descendants, which is going to be an original Disney Channel motion picture this summer. We're partnering with DreamWorks Animation on a new movie called Trolls. You're all familiar with those little trolls you played with when you were growing up with the big hair? They're coming to the big screen, and we'll be the toy partner for those. Sesame Street, certainly you're familiar with Elmo and Cookie Monster, Big Bird and others, so we do all the toys for Sesame Street. And then Jurassic Park. This summer is the new Jurassic movie called Jurassic Park, which is going to be tremendously exciting. What's common about all of these partner brands is that they're all great storytellers. And so we've chosen to partner with these companies. And by the way, Marvel, Star Wars, Princess and Frozen, Descendants, those are all owned by Disney. So Disney is a big partner of ours. Trolls is a DreamWorks animation production, and Jurassic World is a Universal production, and Sesame Street is owned by Sesame Workshop. So we've partnered with these great storytellers to bring their brands to life in toys and games around the world. And that's roughly about 20% of our business, give or take any year. It could be as low as 15, as high as 22. Then we have a group of brands we call our challenger brands. These are smaller brands. I don't know if you're familiar with this term challenger brands, but basically they're not the market share leader in their category, but they do have a very unique, what we call lighthouse identity. So they work a little harder, if you will, but they have great sales behind them, great product behind them. And then finally, we are incubating new brands all the time. And the new brands that we're incubating through story first. So the interesting thing about our business is, as I mentioned earlier, most people think of Hasbro as a toy and game company. And most people think of our competitive set as people like Mattel and Lego and others. But the truth is that we're really a story-driven company. And that's the magic sauce behind our brands. So as we introduce new brands...
Has it always,
Sure.
Has it always been a story brand, or did this...
No, Hasbro is a company that's about 90 years old and started out as more of a toy and game company. And for most of its history was a toy and game company. In the 1980s, the company did start experimenting with television programming. Things like Transformers television show. There was a show called Gem and the Holograms. Remember that? And
I'm an alumni, so
You're
I remember.
great. And so those shows started in the 80s, but they were still, I'd say, more or less vehicles to sell toys. Over the last 10 years, we've flipped that a little bit, and we've developed story for story's sake as a way of bringing the brand alive for our consumers. Sure.
While we're interrupting,
Go ahead, yeah, no.
you mentioned these are new brands. Stretch Armstrong is one I remember.
They're either new or reinvented brands. So actually, of the 4 brands that I put on this screen, and I haven't put all of them up here because for competitive reasons, 3 of these 4 are actually reinvented brands. So Gem and the Holograms was a show back in the 80s, and we're introducing a movie this October, a new Gem movie, which we're quite excited about. Hanazuki is a brand new brand that we're just incubating right now. We haven't even disclosed exactly what that's going to look like to the world. Stretch Armstrong, as you mentioned, Stretch Armstrong was a toy, for those of you who don't know, where you could just stretch it. It was made out of corn syrup. You could stretch the arms and stretch the legs, so we're reinventing that into a story. And then Micronauts is actually also a brand that we're reinventing about a world that exists within our world, but most of us don't know it's there. Okie doke? Okay, so let me talk a little bit about Hasbro. As I mentioned, we're in a lot of markets, 120 markets. A lot of our growth in the last 5 to 7 years has come from markets like Brazil and Russia and China. And what's happened with Hasbro is in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, we used a lot of distributors in these markets, but over the last 10 to 15 years, we've been investing in setting up our own offices in these markets. And that's an investment because when you use a distributor in a market, as you may know, you basically don't have any overhead and any expenses. The distributor buys your products, you make a profit when you sell the product to the distributor, and then they resell them to retailers or direct to consumers. When you start setting up your own offices in a market, you have to put in place an office with salespeople, marketing people, a distribution center, all of the infrastructure. So over the last 10 years, we've invested a lot in setting up our own offices in markets like Brazil and Russia and Peru and Colombia, in other Eastern European markets, and in markets like China as well. And what we're seeing is that a lot of our growth as a company is coming from these emerging markets. So if you look at sort of 2009 to 14, we've gone from about 200 million to about 700 million in these emerging markets. And the profit is growing as well. So that's probably not uncommon to a lot of companies that are global companies. A lot of growth is coming from emerging markets. And one of the things that's driving it for us as a company, if you think about what we did, what we talked about earlier, our purpose as a company, and it may sound a little corny, but it's really to bring joy and fun into people's lives. That's what we do. That's what we're here to do. And when people are worrying about feeding their family and housing, they don't have a lot of money to worry about buying toys and games and video games and other things for their children. But when those markets start developing and people start having more disposable income, that drives our business. So you'll see in this market, in these markets shown here, China, Russia, and Brazil, how that growth in disposable income is actually driving our business. And the other thing that's happening is retail is expanding in these markets as well. And we talk about retail, we're obviously talking about online retail as well as more traditional bricks and mortar retail. So as retail points of distribution increase, as people have more disposable income to spend, that's good for our company because we're able to sell more products. This is probably the most important slide I'm going to show today. And what it is, it really encapsulates our strategy as a company in one slide. And so let me take a few minutes to explain it. We call this our brand blueprint. This is our roadmap. This is a strategy that we've implemented. If you ask, we're 5,200 people in our company. If you ask every person in the company what our blueprint is about, I guarantee you 95% of them can explain this to you. And that's very important for a company, to make sure that you have alignment at all levels of the organization. People understand what the strategy is. So what does this mean? We put brands in the center of our thinking. They're our organizing principle. They're the value in our company. What we do then is, informed by consumer insights and brought to life through storytelling, we then commercialize these brands in 4 major segments. We bring them to life in toys and games, which sit on retail shelves or online. At the bottom, immersive entertainment experiences. So we bring our brands to life in the form of motion pictures, television shows, digital shorts. We have theme park rides. So Transformers has 3 theme park rides at Universal City Studios in Singapore, in LA, and Orlando. Comic books. all types of immersive entertainment experiences. And of course, we benefit every time a consumer interacts with the brand in one of those experiences. Digital media, most of our brands have digital games around them, video games. We actually own a 70% interest in a digital gaming company called Backflip Studios, which is out of Boulder, Colorado. You may know some of their mobile games. Their most well-known mobile game is called Dragon Veil. They also make a game called Ninjump and Paper Toss. These are light mobile games. And so we purchased a 70% interest in them about a year ago. And we're now taking several Hasbro brands and bringing them into light mobile gaming. But we also partner with EA, Activision, Glue Mobile, DNA, Gameloft, and every other major digital gaming company to bring our brands to life in all forms of digital games. Console gaming, MMOs, mobile games. Because we have these great brands, why not bring them to life in the digital format? And then lastly is lifestyle licensing. So when we have a brand like Transformers that we bring to life on the big screen and then on the shelf in the store, we also license that brand to many, many licensees who bring it to life in t-shirts, ball caps, backpacks, home health and beauty aids, all types of products. A brand like Transformers has over 250 licensees globally. And obviously we benefit. A brand like My Little Pony has several hundred licensees. So this is the way that we realize the intrinsic value of our brands. We don't just make a toy based on the brand. We bring the brand to life through storytelling, and we bring it to life in all four of these segments. Are there any questions on this slide? This really encapsulates our strategy. Sure.
So, as far as licensing the Transformers, it's a product that Hasbro developed in-house?
It's a brand, yeah, that Hasbro developed in-house.
But you also license other people?
Yeah, so Transformers is a brand that actually started in the 80s as just a small toy that converted from a robot to a vehicle. What we did through the 80s and 90s is start to build story around that. We developed characters like Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and all these different characters. Then in 2007, we partnered with Paramount and Michael Bay, and we made a movie which came out in 2007, Transformers, which was very successful. Fast forward now to 2015, we've now had 4 movies. They've done over $3 billion in the box office. But in addition to that, we've developed a robust toy and game business. We've partnered with Activision on console gaming and DNA on mobile gaming. We have licensees that do everything from Transformers t-shirts to shoes, and we have theme park rides. A lot of those we license others, but we own and control the brand and the IP, and we develop the storylines behind it. Go.
I was interested in how the brand blueprint relates to the growth of emerging markets, and I think the slide we looked at earlier, it seemed as though they were mostly or entirely U.S. intellectual property or property that's developed here, which is then brought to, say, Brazil and Russia and other places.
Yeah.
So has there been any, or do you see any in the near future, development of brands for local markets or from some of those markets?
Yeah.
Which maybe would have broader capability as well?
No, it's a good question. So when you look at these brands, it is worth noting that actually Transformers is a Japanese brand by origin, but it's become thought of as more maybe a Western brand. Nerf, Play-Doh, Magic, Pony, and Pet Shop are more US-centric. Monopoly is a brand that everybody thinks is from their own country. So Monopoly in the UK, people think Monopoly comes from the UK because all of the street addresses are UK street addresses. Hanazuki is actually a brand that's coming out of Amsterdam. And Micronauts has sort of a Japanese feel to it. But the answer to your question is, we look to develop these brands globally with global stories and global product lines. I think your question is a good one, and it's one that we're co-developing a brand right now with a Chinese partner that's coming out of China that will be launching according to the blueprint globally. So the brands can really come from anywhere. Because we're by origin a US company, a lot of these brands come out of the US. But a brand like Play-Doh is truly a global brand. My Little Pony is also seen as a global brand, even though it comes out of the West. And then others will come out of other markets as well. Sure.
When you're developing some of these new brands, you said you're focused on storytelling, but with the blueprint, is it important that each brand be able to hit every single part? If you were to be developing Play-Doh now, it might be harder to sell a Play-Doh movie. Maybe not, because
Well, we just
all of your
If you go online and check, on Friday we just announced we're developing a Play-Doh movie. It's funny you should say that.
I used to work in Hollywood, and I remember when everything sold at the beginning, and I was like, wow, Candyland, and what's next? Rubik's Cube. But do you need to touch all of those four to develop something initially?
Well, it's a good question. The way that we've come at it is for our franchise brands, one of the criteria is that we can execute it around the entire blueprint. Now, what that means is that not every brand has to have a movie. So when you look at a brand like Nerf, so Nerf is one of our largest brands. It's a very large brand. It's a global brand. The storytelling around Nerf is all user-generated. So if you were to go on YouTube and put in Nerf, you'll see that there is a very robust community of kids who are making, and young adults, who are making their own Nerf stories. In fact, we sell a Nerf blaster where you have a camera built into the blaster, because we found that a lot of kids were filming their Nerf battles. And so the blueprint gets executed a different way for each brand. Not every brand has to have a movie, but every franchise brand does have storytelling behind it. It's informed by consumer insights, and it can be executed around the blueprint. And that's true for our franchise brands. When you get to some of our challenger brands, that we don't execute every challenger brand around the entire blueprint. Sure.
Could you talk a little about your thinking behind having storytelling as a way of building a brand, and the rationale and the advantages that you see as opposed to the other ways of doing it?
Yeah, so storytelling tends to serve a couple of purposes. First of all, it brings the brand to life in a very emotionally resonant way. Children and adults relate to story and relate to characters. In fact, when you think back about a lot of the movies that you've really liked, you tend to actually remember the characters more than the movie. Like you tend to remember Jason Bourne more than the specific plot within any movie, or Harry Potter more than the specific plot. So characters have a way of imprinting on our brains that because we relate to certain heroism, redemption, anger, revenge, whatever the emotion is, characters are a great way of bringing those emotions to life. And so storytelling is a way of taking brands like Transformers and My Little Pony and giving them a life that is so much more emotionally resonant, perhaps, than just a physical product. Secondly, is by developing storytelling, it allows us to continue to reinvent and reimagine our brands over time. And one thing about the toy business is that historically it's been a bit of a hit-driven business, very lumpy in terms of revenue and profit. And by building brands that have longevity and that have storytelling behind them, you're able to develop a lot more value and a lot more staying power. So think of Star Wars, what a tremendous brand that is, and the opportunity for Star Wars to really have such a great history behind it and a future ahead of it because of the story and characters behind it. And we feel that by developing story, we're going to not only optimize the value of these brands over time, but give them a long life, because the only limitation on these are our creativity and our ability to develop new characters and new story, as opposed to just marketing a new item. Sure.
So, as a storytelling company, I think one of the risks of doing that is that your audience might take your story in directions that are unintended or unexpected. I'm specifically thinking of the My Little Pony brand. There's a very strong adult male population.
Bronies.
And I saw the documentary. And so, what is your response to something like that?
Yeah, I think there's by the way, excellent question. I think there's an old school and a new school way of looking at that. I think an old school way of looking at that is very closed source, like very protective. But our view of it is actually quite different. Our view is that these brands belong to us, but they also belong to all the fans. And so taking a very democratized approach to that, we like to say that we're giving our fans an authorship role in the future of our brands. Now, there's some risk to that, and we have to be careful. We don't condone anything that's really left or really right in terms of distasteful pornography or anything like that. Like, that's off limits from our perspective. But we do feel that it gives fans a great opportunity to have ownership of the brands. And I'll give you an example of it. So we all know that 3D printing is the next sliced bread, although it's going to take a long time to get into our kitchens, right? So with the advent of 3D printing, we've been looking at ways to, how should we embrace 3D printing? And what we noticed is that a lot of people were putting stuff online with My Little Pony and Transformers, 3D printing opportunities where people could come and download and make their own. And it was clearly a trademark infringement because they were taking our intellectual property. And so instead of shutting it down, which we could have easily done, we actually partnered up and we launched a new site called superfanart.com. And we give creators and inventors the opportunity to use our IP to create, and then people can buy. It's more of an open source approach, if you will. When you think about these brands, I mean, okay, we don't necessarily want people doing distasteful things, but Transformers is another example. For the first time ever, we let our fans design the next Autobot. And it's a great way of user-generated ownership of the brands. So again, within the boundaries of tastefulness and legality, we like to take a much more open source approach to these things. Okay, so what I wanted to talk a little bit about was next, if I can. Blueprint we've talked about, everybody gets that. Consumer insights. So we have a saying in our place, which is the consumer is the boss. And in many cases, that's interesting because the consumer might be 2 years old or 5 years old. But we are absolutely maniacally focused on being informed by consumer insights. If you look at Hasbro over the years, we've gone from a company that made a lot of toys and games that we thought people would like, put them on TV, promoted the heck out of it, and I hope they sold, to a company that now starts with consumer insights. That's our starting point. And we use those consumer insights to inform every major strategic decision we make. So just by coincidence, Katie Gaffoe is here. Katie heads up our consumer insights group. Katie joined us about 5 years ago from United Technologies. Is that your background?
That's right.
And so Katie is going to just talk a few minutes about consumer insights. And Katie and I have something, other than working together for the last 5 years, we're both parents of triplets. So it's a...
Yes,
right.
It was really awesome when I was interviewing with John to see the photographs in the background and have an immediate conversation point. So thank you, John. I actually always wanted to go to Yale. This is just, my one half-an-hour dream. I ended up going to state schools. Michigan State, unfortunately, just did terribly in the Final Four, so they didn't live up to any of our expectations, and I'm not wearing any green anywhere anymore. So I actually have a great, great job and an awesome global team. And our job description is not one you would find in a typical career office. We're insight hunters. And actually, we were meeting with DreamWorks recently, and in true Hollywood form, one of the guys said, "Oh my gosh, who are the SEALs? Who are the people who do this? Who are they?" He was immediately going military on me. But we really call ourselves insight hunters. And as John said, we work all around the blueprint. So whether it's toy and game, whether it's entertainment, whether it's licensing, or whether it's digital, on any given day, on any given month, our insight hunters are really trying to deeply understand it from the consumer's point of view. And that consumer can be mom, dad, grandma, it could be kids, it could be caregivers, and in fact, sometimes it's retail. So we often really think of ourselves as covering the entire blueprint, which is really pretty exciting. And when you think about what you would want in a typical market research function, we do all of that basic stuff that you would want to see. I think there's a slide here. But we do more than just trend tracking, looking at POS data, volumetrics, discrete choice, tracking, media mix modeling. All of that is really important, but what we really needed to do to get closer to our consumers was to really come up with some really proprietary ways around the globe to do that. So we listen and we play and we watch in many different ways and forms, and lots of different tools that John has given a really nice checkbook to our team that we use really smartly. And one of my philosophies when I got to Hasbro was to do fewer things really well, really deeply, in more places around the globe. My background at United Technologies allowed me to be lots of places around the globe. They're a $54 billion company no one really knows a lot about. So I went from really big toys, Sikorsky helicopters, to G.I. Joe. So it was a really cool transition. So last year alone, we listened, talked, played to over 70,000 consumers. And we did that not only in all those traditional methods, but we do that with Fun Labs, which is another great, really cool team that I don't know if you were able to experience, Charlotte, when you were there. Maybe you were? You got to watch. So we have grown and developed our marvelous Fun Lab team from just being Rhode Island based to having a Fun Lab in the United Kingdom, to having one in the UK, and I'm sorry, Hong Kong, my HK UK, Hong Kong, which also has access to China, and a new one in Los Angeles, which we call a pop-up Fun Lab, in recognition of all the Disney Princess and Frozen business that we recently got from another competitor who will remain unnamed. So in our Fun Labs, we have opportunity, whether it's ergonomics or whether it's play experience or whether it's listening to dads talk about princesses. Every single day, we can listen and observe. But we also go out into homes. We go to after-school programs. We go to YMCAs. We also have a unique program that John challenged us to start 3 years ago called Hasbro at Play, where all of the marketing and design teams go out into families' homes in the Rhode Island and the Massachusetts and the Connecticut area in pairs of 2 with no agenda, just to hang out for the afternoon, see how those families live, what's on their grocery list, what's on their to-do list. Because as John said, we have to really think about our time with kids is when they're not eating, sleeping, going to school, or doing chores. It's what do they do in their leisure time. That's really our competitive set, to really deeply understand that. So there's a couple of other things that we do to get this deep understanding. One of them that's a first for Hasbro is creating global online communities. So we were able to work with a team in Boston that created our own proprietary families in the UK, Australia, US, and Canada. And these 500 families allow us to talk, Skype, videotape, shop with themselves and their kids 24/7. They can talk to each other because it's a closed online community. They do projects for us every week. Rebelle, which is one of our new brands, we had a whole group of girls for 2 years who we kept going back to over and over again to help us refine Rebelle and help us better learn about how we could take it from being a blaster that was their brother's that they hid in their closet to something that was just their own. So that's been really exciting to be able to have a global online community. We recently, this year, added 2 more global communities, one in Brazil and one in China, to help us really understand families in those communities even more deeply. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about, from a continuous conversation standpoint, about a study that we did last year that was really exciting. It was called Modern Play. And we really wanted to understand, with the infusion of digital objects, obviously video games, other forms of play that were competing with face-to-face play, because we would hear from parents over and over again, oh, I want to get them off the screen. I really need to better understand, what I can do, what tools I can use. How can I bring out my kid from behind the screen or off the mobile phone? So our Modern Play study was really helpful at understanding what parents wanted, what kids wanted, where there was conflict, where there was commonality. And because we're streaming this, I can't tell you our trade secrets, but we found out some really important things about the importance of building memories and how they wanted to happen together. And another study we did recently with millennial moms and dads in France, in Russia, and the US was really understanding their pain points and how could we better meet their pain points. So whether it was after you got out of the bath or when you were in the car or where you were going that was mobile, what could we do to help solve those pain points? Because for a lot of parents, everything was becoming too transactional and too much maintenance and not enough play, and they needed help figuring out how to play. So it was really, really helpful for us to understand the modern parent. So that's it in a nutshell.
Great, thanks, Katie. So we got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to leave 5 minutes at the end for some additional questions. I'm going to buzz through the next couple of slides. A lot of it is repetitive what we said, but I wanted you to get a feel for it, okay? So, why do we invest in storytelling? This is a little bit of a snapshot into what's happening in the toy and game business. So what this shows is over the last 3 years, 12, 13, and 14, entertainment-backed brands, so toys in the store that had some form of entertainment behind them, grew at 7% CAGR, whereas brands that didn't have any entertainment behind them in store actually were flat to slightly down. Everybody get that? That's like a big, big headline in our business.
Is this why Lego made the movie? It's about the same chart? They're a little behind.
It's apparent, right? When you go into a store, the things that sell are the things that have story and character and entertainment behind them. So, why do we do story? And we talked about this. It's because it allows kids how to play, it participate, it deepens that consumer engagement. We feel that we have great stories. I put on this slide some of the different things we do. So we have theme park rides with Transformers, we have feature films, books, digital shorts, digital gaming, television shows, and our goal is to deliver these stories anytime, anywhere, on any screen. So we know that kids are agnostic in terms of platform. They don't really make a distinction between watching something on TV or their iPad or on their phone. So it's really a platform agnostic approach. When you look at what's happening, clearly box office is growing. We see that. TV, I think the demise of TV has been greatly overstated. TV is still, from a revenue perspective, a big business. It just so happens that people are watching it differently now, more time shifted, more over the top, and other opportunities for TV. You may not know it, but we own a 40% interest in a television network called Discovery Family. It used to be called The Hub. So we own 40%, Discovery owns 60%. When you go roll, you'll see Nickelodeon, you'll see Disney Channel, you'll see Cartoon Network, and you'll see Discovery Family. And we program the day parts on that. So all the shows that appear during from like 6 a.m. in the morning till 6 p.m. at night are Hasbro Studio produced shows. We have a studio based in Burbank where we produce all of our own television programming. And then by putting that on Discovery Children's Family Network in the US, what we also do is distribute that on all of these networks around the world. So our shows are shown in about 180 territories around the world. These shows are Transformers, My Little Pony, Littlest Pet Shop, and others, and we formed a content ecosystem where really any platform, kids want to watch these shows, they can find them anywhere, VOD, over-the-top, television, etc. Want to talk 2 seconds about the box office. We are in the film business. We partner with companies like Paramount on Transformers and G.I. Joe. Universal, we released a film with Universal last year called Ouija that has done over $100 million at the box office. We're releasing a gem movie later this year. And you may be familiar with our Transformers movies. These are movies where we've partnered with Paramount on a number of different Transformers movies. And you can expect there'll most likely be more Transformers movies, given their success. The last movie we did, which was the 4th Transformers movie, did 1.1 billion, was the largest film ever in China last year, over $300 million in China. As I mentioned, we did Ouija. We've also done G.I. Joe movies with Paramount, and the last one starred The Rock, and we're in development on the next G.I. Joe movie. We did a movie called Battleship. It was on Universal. And then we're developing a gem movie, which is coming out in October of this year, a total reinvention of that brand. Now, the other thing we're doing is we partner with studios on all these shows, but the thing we're doing now is we're also going to start developing our own movies and financing our own movies. So we announced recently that we formed our own studio called AllSpark Pictures, where we'll be producing our own movies. And our first movie from AllSpark will be My Little Pony. It'll be an animated movie coming out in 2017. So, and then as I mentioned earlier, licensing is a benefit of all of these activities. So all of the next slides are case studies, and we don't have time to go through it. I'm going to click through them. Like, I won't even talk. I'm just going to click through them because you've gotten the basis for it. You'll see what they're all about. So we talked about Transformers box office. We apply the blueprint to Transformers across all of these platforms. We bring it to life. It's not just a toy brand, entertainment, digital partnerships. You'll see what happens. Before, 98% of Transformers revenue were in toy and game. And by leading with story, we're now able to balance out the revenue across all of the different platforms. And so a much lesser amount from a percentage perspective comes from toy and games. Everybody get that? It's pretty self-evident, right? And then we have a television show called Robots in Disguise. It's on Cartoon Network in the US. Even though we own 40% of Discovery Family Channel, we've chosen to put Transformers television show on Cartoon Network, a little broader reach, a little more in line exactly with the consumer we're trying to reach, which is a young boy for that consumer. We have theme park rides. A lot of our products now have a digital component to them in terms of analog and digital. And obviously, we develop all kinds of comic books, digital games. We have a new, in the bottom right-hand corner, a new mobile game called Battle Tactics from DNA. And it's just the beginning for us. We think a lot more. So same formula for My Little Pony. We just had our best year ever. We apply it across the blueprint. We've made a television show. We're now our 100th episode of My Little Pony. It's around the world. We have digital expressions of My Little Pony. We have a mobile game with Gameloft. Toys that are digitally integrated. You scan the pony and it takes you into the digital world. And we're expanding the franchise across broader age range because the brand really has tremendous potential. Partnerships. It's a $1 billion brand at retail. It's a great brand. The last one I want to talk about, and I'm going to end at this, is Nerf. So Nerf is a great brand for us. A lot of people think of Nerf as, it used to be a little orange basketball. What we did is we developed these blasters that really bring the brand to life in an incredible way. The consumers are roughly 7 to 14 years of age, and we make a whole line of products from high-end technical product all the way to more sports-oriented product. We launched a new brand 2 years ago targeting specifically the female consumer. We found through our consumer insights work that girls wanted to play with Nerf too. And so what we did is we launched a whole new line. It was built on insights, as Katie mentioned. It's called Nerf Rebel. The brand essence of that is Femme Fierce. It's the female warrior, right? It's a great brand. And so we developed a full line of product. It's doing phenomenally well for us. It's grown at an astronomical pace, and it's a very successful brand. So that's the presentation. The last thing I wanted to show you, and then I'll open up for questions. Katie suggested that I bring some props. So I did. So good suggestion, Katie. So this is a Nerf. You think of a Nerf blaster as just a little gun, a little blaster that shoots these little bullets. But when I show you this thing here, see if it's working. Ready? No, I won't hit anybody. So you shoot, right? It has incredible capacity, and then it has this big thing at the end. You can shoot a big missile at the end. So pretty cool product. But you know, our designers in Nerf love to one-up themselves every year. So this was last year's big product. Pretty cool product. Has a great, you put all your darts in here, plus it has that big one you shoot out of here. So we challenged them. We said, you know, guys, a competitor came out with another line. We have about a 65-70% market share in the blaster category. You go in any toy store, it's a huge. So we challenged them. We said, we need the most kick-ass blaster you've ever seen. So this is a new product. No one's seen this other than you guys? It has a tripod to it. I took that off. So this thing, let's see if I can get this working. How cool is that, right? Look at the... And it keeps going, right? Tell me that isn't the coolest thing in the world. No one should go home for the holidays this year without one of these for your niece or nephew. Okay, we're out of time, but I'm open to questions. If anybody has to leave, please get up and leave, but I'm happy, and Katie's obviously happy to answer any questions.
So first of all, this is awesome.
Oh, thanks.
And
I wish we had more time. There's a lot more story to tell, but
shoot up the whole.
it gets out a little aggression, you know. It feels good.
So first question is real simple. I have 11 nieces and nephews who we're all customers of yours.
Thank you.
And kids, and I'm wondering how people get among those 500 families. How do you choose them? How do
So we recruit in a lot of different ways. You have to tell me where they live, and I can give you my card. But we love kid testers and their families and their parents and their caregivers. So just come on over and I'll.
But how do we usually attract them?
So we usually recruit them depending on whether it's in the U.S. For our fun labs. We have a recruiting method that's really successful, which is word of mouth. We have about 13,000 families in New England that can come through. They only come through once every 6 months. So we use advertising in different moms magazines, different local magazines. For community space, where we are around the globe, we similar methods. We also host things in schools, at churches, and after-school programs. There's lots of different ways, and often what we like to do is have friend groups because friends are the most comfortable with each other. So we'll have 2 boys and 2 girls together, and we like friend groups, frankly, to come together. So lots of different methods and lots of different ways.
And this is, looks like this one, but I was wondering, I have a small board game startup that we're doing play testing with now. That is a little bit funded by Yale and a little bit self-funded, but we are definitely doing it on the cheap. And I was wondering if you could, without in the absence of a multi-million-dollar industry to help out with the extensive, marketing I'll do. Do you have advice on, when we're doing kind of startup scrappy efforts, do you have advice on, marketing or I guess market research on the cheap side?
Well, market research, I mean, it's just really about talking to consumers. So the more consumers you can have interact with it, I mean, it's tough. And there's a lot of online tools that you can use as well. But with a game, you really need to observe play. One thing about market research in our business is that you can ask people if they like something or what they like about it, but there's nothing like observing. And especially with, I don't know what age your game is targeted toward, if it's more of a strategy game or a young person's game, young kid's game.
Storytelling game for 12 year olds.
Yeah, so on that, I think it's a lot of observational because oftentimes people really have trouble even articulating why they like or dislike something. But if you watch them play with something, it gives you more insight. And that's what we do, a lot of observational work.
You just find your local Girl Scout or Boy Scout chapters. They often really like to have, or junior achievement, they really like to entertain these kinds of ideas. You would be careful with your IP. If you have people sign releases, just come up with a simple, once you start sharing it, people taking your idea. But there are, on the cheap, other ways you can get to groups of people that are in that age group you're describing.
Okay. And I'm happy to stay afterwards if everyone wants to talk. I do have time. We have time to do that. A little bit of time.
Quick question. You seem very accommodating to independent development of consumers.
Sure.
What are your thoughts or specific actions now that you're expanding to developing countries and piracy or counterfeit companies?
Well, piracy and counterfeit in the toy and game business, there's only so much you can protect. So we really look for our brands, and then when we have unique play patterns, we patent those. But I was in the athletic footwear business, and it was an issue there. In a lot of businesses, it's an issue. But I think the way there's legal ways to combat that, but there's also ways to do it by just having great brands and making it very hard for people to be able to copy the brands.
In developed countries too, what happens is that the counterfeits tend to fall apart and break pretty quickly, so they end up realizing that it wasn't worth the cheap purchase price. We were just in Brazil and Mexico with 10 designers, and I can't tell you how many people said to us, it's just not worth it, because 2 days or 3 days after your birthday, and birthdays are heavily celebrated in Latin America, to have something fall apart. And there's also retailers making a really great effort to have branded wrapping paper, if you will, so when you go to a store like We Happy in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, you leave with a branded wrapping paper that no other person has access to. It's like a Tiffany kind of thing. And so you just got a really valuable, authentic product because truly the knockoff goods look just like our equestrian girls. They just don't have shoes, But when you go to play with them, they fall apart. So parents have become pretty savvy. They don't want their kids to just get stuff that.
Okay, so one more question.
I was just going to ask, you talked a lot about kind of growing brands and speaks to the development point, but also like kind of reawakening older healthier brands.
Reinventing or reimagining them, yeah.
Have you, I feel like a lot of, especially on like the content side, so like looking at Marvel as an example, like it's been an acquisition target because of its suite of kind of brands. What's Hasbro's view on acquiring like established and popular brands? And is that something you think you'd like to add into the kind of complement?
Yeah.
New brands.
Well, it's a good question. We have a lot of brands that we have access to, and there's a lot of storytelling behind those brands. So we don't necessarily feel a need to go out and acquire a lot more brands. I mean, Disney acquired Marvel at a time when Marvel had proven out that they could take a brand like Iron Man and make it successful in the theaters. We have acquired brands. So Hanazuki is a brand new brand that nobody knows yet. It was literally 2 animators in Amsterdam that we found. and they had great animation art, so we've acquired them, and then we're going to turn that into a story. But we feel we have a lot of, we have a vault full of stories, and Micronaut's a great example of that, that has a lot of rich, deep lore behind it that we haven't even started to mine yet. So we feel we have a lot. It's not to say that we would never acquire, because we've, in the last 7 years, we spent $300 million to acquire a 50% interest in a television network. We spent undisclosed amount to buy a digital gaming company, Backflip Studios. So we're not against acquiring if the right opportunity comes along, but we're an IP-rich company. So we have a lot to mine just with what we have. Okay, do we have, we gotta go? Okay, we have to go, but I'm happy to answer your question afterwards. Thank you all very much, and thank you, Katie.